Hello, BookTube. Today I'm going to be giving you the first part of my review of For Your Eyes Only by Ian Fleming, which was published in 1960. It is the 8th book in the original Bond series, and I read this as a part of my general reread of the Ian Fleming James Bond books, which consists of 12 novels and 2 collections of short stories, of which this is the first collection. This review is going to be slightly different from the other Bond book reviews I've done in the fact that it's a collection of short stories, and that means that I'm actually going to review each story individually, and that means that this review is going to be split over 5 videos. And in this one, I'm going to review the first story in the collection, which is From a View to a Kill. The story begins with James Bond in Paris. He's in Paris staying overnight after a mission on the Austrian border with Hungary went wrong, and he was trying to get a Hungarian defector out, and the man got killed. Bond is displeased by this, and he's even less than pleased to be in Paris, which is a city he doesn't particularly like. He is, when we meet him, in a cafe, trying to sort of psych himself up to try and enjoy himself in Paris, but he doesn't think that's going to happen. As Bond is sort of getting ready to start his night properly, a young woman called Mary Ann Russell from F Station, which is MI6's station in Paris, arrives and comes to collect him because there's been an urgent message from M for him to get in contact with them. So they go to Station F, and Bond meets with the head of Station F, Wing Commander Rattray. Rattray, Rattray. My pronunciation's not as good as it should be sometimes. And he informs Bond that a dispatch rider from NATO headquarters, SHAPE, has been killed whilst taking intelligence material to MI6's own intelligence unit close to NATO, based in the town of Saint-Germain. The dispatch rider is from the British Army's Royal Corps of Signals, and he was shot in a section of road which went through a forest, and his dispatches were taken, but also his watch and wallet were taken, and this was sort of meant to make it look like it wasn't an intelligence job, but NATO security are convinced it is. Emma's put Bond on the job, despite the fact that, as Bond says, and the head of F Station says, this is a matter for NATO security. M thinks that Bond should investigate it because NATO security want to annex M's the Secret Service's independent unit in Saint-Germain, and M thinks that if they don't investigate this will be enough. This will give NATO enough sort of leverage to get the British government to force M into letting NATO annex it. And so M is determined to stop this and puts Bond on the job. So Bond goes to NATO headquarters. He's regarded by the NATO chief, an American colonel called Shriver, as rather an imposition that Bond keeps. Bond is double checking everything they do, and he's making himself frankly unpopular with them. However, Bond goes to have a look around the area, and whilst he's there, he notices that nearby where on the road in the forest, he stops by an area and sees that there are telltale marks on the bark of a tree where somebody's lent a motorcycle bike. Bond combines this with the fact that the dispatch rider wasn't killed at high speed, which means that the killer approached him from behind, and the dispatch rider recognised him and wasn't afraid of him. And so Bond puts 2 and 2 together and suggests that the killer was dressed in a disguise, and this allowed him to get close enough to the dispatch rider to kill him without causing a huge amount of damage. And then Bond has another look around the glade and around the forest, and he discovers, after arriving there early on in the morning, that there is in fact that there is a hidden underground bunker in the forest being used by probably the GRU, which is Soviet Military Intelligence, for a stay-behind unit. who have the bike, and they have a man dressed up in Royal Signal Corps uniform on a BSA bike, which is a Birmingham small arms bike, which are the bikes used by the British Army at the time. And so Bond works out that the Soviets are doing it, and so Bond then does a dummy run from Shape headquarters to the down the road towards Saint Germain. He has a gun and he's prepared to, and he's armed with a Colt 45. I think by the sounds of it, it's a Colt 1911. And he drives down the road. The biker tries to ambush him, but Bond shoots him, and then Bond drives back to where the tree where the man would have kept his bike, and then waits for the bunker to open. Bond has got the men from the independent unit stationed around this area, and they're all waiting to ambush them. Then a small fight breaks out, and one of the Russians tries to kill Bond and almost does so by turning Bond's pistol on him. Fortunately, somebody shoots the Russian in the back and saves him. Bond looks around at the four men from the independent station who look rather embarrassed, and then Mary Ann Russell appears and says that she killed the man. And Bond is very grateful for that. And then Bond, that's where the story ends. I should say that, as with all the Bond books, I've reread them, and due to a kill, I very clearly remember and really enjoying it the first time round. I like the idea of the story, that of it being a sort of compact Bond story where Bond is dealing with a very simple mystery. In some ways, this is very much a sort of quintessential Bond story boiled down to its essentials, where you have a foreign location, a mystery, and a bungo, and the Russians. And it works really well. I mean, it makes me wish that Fleming had actually written more short stories, because he can clearly put one together very competently and keep your interest. Now, there's certain things about it I also like. The fact that him being suspicious of NATO security because it's a multinational force. So the senior figures are a couple of Frenchmen, and a Frenchman and a couple of Italians, and worst of all, the head of security for NATO's combined services is a German, which is partly it's funny because of course M is described as a Victorian figure, so he's probably a veteran of the two world wars and has sort of instinctive suspicion of Germans. But also there is the reality at the time that quite senior members of the West German army, the Bundeswehr, as well as West German intelligence, had, shall we say, interesting job histories in the years between 1933 and 1945, which would, in the 1970s and 80s, become known and cause quite a few scandals in West Germany, but also in Austria. And so that I thought was an interesting thing. And also Bond, we get a bit of Bond's back history, which is that he visited Paris at 16 and lost his virginity, and as Bond describes it, almost lost his note case with his money in, which was stolen, almost stolen. One of Bond's sort of problems is that Paris, he says there's a sense of shame in Paris because of the occupation during the Second World War, and this is something I've noticed, and when I come to do the live stream, probably in the next 2 weeks, I'm going to I'll talk about this a bit more, because there's a sort of ongoing theme through these books from the very beginning, but I've noticed in the last couple of books, particularly From Russia With Love and Goldfinger, how much the Second World War sort of is an underlying factor or a sense of not just the stories but also Bond's feeling about the world around him in the 1950s, as opposed to just being a sort of natural thing, that Bond's experience of the war is feeding into his sense of the world around him as he interacts with it, and also his sense of sort of, in some ways, dissatisfaction with the world. When you get sort of that sense in here, in this first story, I will be reviewing next the title story, For Your Eyes Only, and I should put that up a bit earlier in the day tomorrow, because I'll read this pretty much after I get up. So I will see you tomorrow, BookTube. Bye.